Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to change the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, guys, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out. I'm excited for our guest today. I just met Leigh. She has over 20 years in the healthcare and business industry. She went on her own, build Bold Industries Group. Her passion is tackling big challenges that, when solved, make the world a better place. Her mission, and I love this, is to help leaders solve problems for good. I mean, who doesn't want to solve problems for good? Thanks for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Awesome. So tell us, so 20 years in healthcare, what prompted you? I mean, that's a pretty long career. What prompted you to kind of get out of that and start, your old company?
Yeah. So I never thought in my entire life that I was like going to be an entrepreneur. I don't think I actually let myself think about my career that way. I think it was very traditional in the sense of, go to school, go to college, do a, internship and just go, go, go in the corporate world. And I think what happened for me at 48 is I just felt I was misaligned. And I actually quit my job without having a job. So I got to a point where, at that point, really in 2020, I was burnt out. It was the beginning of the pandemic, and
Mm,
I had really run myself into a nub. A lot of expectations, a lot of hard work, and just got to a point where I needed to make a change. And it was a big swing of bold by doing that. So I think what I wanted to do at that point, I really had not planned it. But what was probably the most incredible thing about that decision was once I made a decision to leave, things started to come up or to just in my mind, what could I create? And I think what I realize now is where I maybe in the past, when I was in the corporate environment where I, got in trouble or pushed too hard or, wanted things to go faster, quicker, better, was probably just the entrepreneur in me really trying to make things happen in a different type of system, right? So
mhm,
now I think I'm in a place where I can push daily, push on myself
mhm.
as an entrepreneur. And then also when I need to, I can, slow down. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me that comes with the bold move that I made was freedom. And obviously there's fear, the other F in there, in the sense of what can happen when you make a big change like that. But I think the biggest thing for me was freedom. I still work in healthcare. I still do consulting and work with leaders in that area. I mean, obviously, I spent a lot of my life there, and
Mhm.
still enjoy it. But I get to choose, so that's part of the freedom too, is the choice.
That's really cool. So what prompted Bold Industries? What prompted that?
Right.
Where did
Yeah.
that come from?
Yeah. So now you probably can't go a day without seeing me with something bold on or saying the word bold. But I think throughout my career, I would say, let's take a big swing of bold. Like, let's really try something we don't know exactly how it's going to land or maybe how it will turn out. We are making an educated, pragmatic, thoughtful risk, right? And we're taking those risks. But I did that in my career probably throughout. From a personal perspective, I've always been a very straight shooter, a very, want to get to this, the middle of the problem as quickly as we can and be efficient to solve it. So I think, I've been bold, but I don't think I walked into a room that way, in the
Mm,
sense of like announcing it. And I think now, I think when I thought about my business, so Bold Industries Group is also an acronym that says big. So when I was creating the names or thinking about the names for my business, I thought, bold would be great. And I love that thinking big, thinking bigger. And so that's where the Bold Industries Group comes from in the sense of, the acronym. And I think thinking bravely, thinking courageously, and thinking forward is really where I wanted the organization to go. When I first started out, I had four different ideas of what I could do. I think when you get that freedom, sometimes the freedom can go like, a lot of directions.
mhm.
And I was the first time I actually could think that way too, because like you're in the corporate world, which is not a bad world to be in at all. So I'm not saying that was negative, but you do have a
You're a
certain box.
box.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have a box you can think within, and you really can't, and understandably think outside that box when you're in another organization. But I had this opportunity, and I loved design. I loved my career. My career was a good career. I enjoy consulting and solving problems, especially when things are messy. Like if something's really messed up, I like to come in and and figure out how to fix it or solve the issue or get to the bottom of something to make it better. I love being outside and grilling, and I love music, so like the different businesses really were around those types of things. And where I settled was really on the consulting, really starting that off and getting that going. And I had a list of 15 people that I knew and knew me, and that's really important when you're starting off, is to connect with people who already know you and trust you, right? And for them just to be updated about what you're doing. And from that list, I then launched the consulting arm of the business. And then as the years went by, I didn't jump into, the events and the membership and the podcast and the things that I do now until, I got things really going. And so I think being focused also in that freedom was really important.
So what were some of, I mean, you went from like healthcare, which is pretty stable by the world standard, like you said, went to school, got the job, did the thing, and then you went out to be an entrepreneur. How was that handled among like family and friends? And what were some of the obstacles that you overcame in order to start a business and totally go
Sure,
from like
sure.
employee to entrepreneur?
Yeah, stable is a interesting word these days. Especially with all the layoffs and things like that. I think there was a sense,
Yeah.
and I certainly had it, that if I worked for someone else, I had a stable job, right? I had a 401k, I had insurance, I had an office, like all I did was, I had to just go do my job, and it was quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote easier because it was stable. I think what I found out is sometimes that stability comes at a cost, right? So for me, the cost was my health, my emotional health, my physical health, my mental health. Like, when, I got to a point because I was in burnout that I was sleeping 2 hours a night. And for me, that stability was not a payoff for what I was losing, for my health. And that really was the main reason I made that choice. When I made the choice to leave, my closest family absolutely supported it because the people closest to you can see what's happening to you on a daily basis. People that, your friends that you maybe see twice a year, 3 times a year, whatever, they may not see the day to day, but your direct family sees it. And it was a complete support from my family to do that. The person I was most nervous to tell was my mom,
Mm-hmm.
because she just is very much like have a just from a generational aspect,
Right.
have stability, have a 401k, have it, have insurance, those types of things. And, she's worked very hard for us to be where we are and in our lives as her children. And I was nervous, but she was so supportive. And I think she was also noticing, even though we're not in the same state, she was also noticing that, it was changing, how I slept, how I reacted, how I could handle certain things. And so I was most nervous to tell her. For me, from a perspective of how I did it, it was bootstraps. So it wasn't like going out and getting venture capital and those types of things, which, more props to the people who do that because that is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it is something I don't know very much about, honestly. So it was one more thing to learn that I didn't want to add to my plate. So I really, we used our savings and we delayed certain things, and I had a runway. So I knew that if I wasn't getting a certain amount of clients by this particular time with this amount of revenue, I needed to start interviewing. I needed to start, thinking about going back into the corporate world. So I had a plan. And I think that was also helpful. But I had to believe in myself, which is it that mindset of like, wow, I don't have that job. I don't have that place to go to. I don't have, that regular routine of it. There was a point in early January, February when I was first starting out that I was still interviewing while trying to start the business. And I had to realize that my energy was being diffused across plan A, B, C, D, E, F, because I'm a planner. And I really had to go all in on plan A, which was the business, which again is a bold move because it's very nerve-wracking to turn down interviews and turn down opportunities that are, quote unquote, something that could happen in a stable way, right? Probably still takes a couple months to do because of all the interviewing, but I had to go all in on plan A. And once I did that, that really was my focus. And so I just worked really, really, really hard from January to April of 21. And that's really when I launched my business. I took some time after I left to kind of heal myself. So I didn't jump straight into doing consulting or straight in to the next thing, I knew I needed to take some time for me. So the fall of 2020 really was building my business, creating the products and services, thinking thoughtfully about who I could serve, because I think that's what life's all about, helping others, and then kicking it off in January. So I think it was a really important decision for me to be all in on plan A. And then it took me about 4 months. So the last week of April was my first client. And I hold them close, because it's the first, in a
First,
way, the first person that believed in you when you sell
yeah,
something or when you have a consulting engagement. Like, you remember that first one,
sure do.
for a multitude of reasons. Like, I'm doing it. It really worked.
So true. I think of my, as you saying that, I'm thinking of my first client. So yeah, not
Yeah,
eight,
you'll
9 years
always
ago.
remember them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They may not be perfect and you're not perfect, but it was just like, wow, they believed in me when, I was first starting off. So it meant a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. So it took about 4 months to actually get your first client of hard work. So lots of calls, lots of did you like how did you kind of build your business? What methods
Yeah,
did you use to get
I
the word
mean,
out?
people do it in different ways, right? They can get real
Mhm.
fancy. I really kept it simple. So I had my first 15 in my Excel spreadsheet and I just kept adding to that. And even though I was meeting with people, of course, not every person had something or, could think of how they could use me or how they could, put me into a project that they had. Really, my intention of meeting people was just to say, hey, this is what I'm doing now, and this is how I'm doing it. And I just really, whether they had another name, and that's usually what would happen is, they would say, well, I don't have anything right now, but it's so cool and I'm so happy for you. But hey, have you checked in with? And then they would introduce me. So I'm appreciative of my network for that, because my first client was someone I didn't know. They were not an original 15. They were actually, I think, a two referral. Like, I met with someone, they referred, and then I met with that person and they referred. And so I think it's just keep going, keep having the conversations. You're not going into it with a salesy kind of mind. I really hated that aspect when I was first starting, because I thought, I'm not a salesperson. Like, I don't really like that, and it takes a lot of energy. I'm an introvert, so it takes a lot of energy to sell. And I think what I realized that it's not a sale, it's a conversation. And I think that's the thing that I did pretty naturally, to have a conversation, to check in, to see where people were, and to share kind of what I was doing and how I was doing differently. I think one of the things that my consulting model does differently is I have something called the D90. The D is designed and the 90 is 90 days. So my intention is only to be in your organization for 90 days, which is not a normal consulting model in healthcare. And so coming into that space and saying, I need you to radically prioritize what you want to accomplish in the next 3 months, and then let's get at it. And so I think that was an interesting model, which I think I could get into organizations, they could see proof of concept what I was doing. And what happened was, like, I would do a D90 in one area and then, like, let's take this over here and let's work on this challenge. And so it was able to kind of take that application of the process and work in different areas of the same organization, but in a very agile manner. And so, and that kind of also aligned with how I like to work, which is, faster, trying things, having them not work, learning, going forward, right? So that growth mindset within an organization. And from there, it really started to, people asked me to start coaching their teams within the organizations I was working with, to actually help the leaders implement some of the things that we were doing. And that's kind of how the coaching kicked off.
That's cool. So in your first 4 months, if you remember, I don't, how
Oh, I
many
remember. It
appointments,
hasn't
I'm
been
sure
that
you
long.
remember. Okay, how many appointments would you be running? Because a lot of entrepreneurs are listening to this, and I just think some people don't realize the amount of work
Yeah.
sometimes it needs to get off the ground.
Yeah.
So how many appointments were you running, just like to show people what you're doing? Were you
Mhm.
running a week roughly? Do you remember?
You mean like how many meetings did I have or how
Yeah,
many reach outs?
yeah,
From the it could vary, but it was no less than six a day, whether it
six a
be a
day.
reach out via, and I'm talking about, 45, minute to an hour meetings, and being able to reach out. And at the same time you're doing this, it's a very cyclical thing. So you're working on a list, you're also creating the next list to come in. So it's, you're feeding your funnel. So you need to have time to work in between, but
Prospect and time to be on meetings.
yeah, you're definitely an operator when you're starting off. And, we had a team of two when we started off. My daughter and myself founded the company
Oh,
together.
cool.
So she's been with me since the very beginning. I'm very lucky that she chose me to work with, had lots of opportunities. And I think, being able to have a person also to shoot things off of, or to do some of the more detailed, like I'm very good at big picture visionary. I can get into the micro, but I have a micro macro type of role. Like I like to get into the weeds and get out. And so I think from the perspective of that, it was a lot of reaching out and putting yourself out there. And whether it's a coffee chat or, at that time, 21, we were still, everyone wasn't even vaccinated yet. So it was
Right.
a different world than it is today in year 4 of my business. But it was a lot of that. And then at the same time, I also got to, see sunlight, which was the first in a long time. Because I was in the corporate world, I very rarely got to be outside or get outside because of my schedule or the things that, were just, on my plate. And so it was nice to be able to get outside. So I did make time for that, but it is a heads down. It isn't like I'm just going to, surf LinkedIn and do some connects here or there. It's like you
Couple
have to
hours
have,
a day. Yeah.
yeah, intentional strategy. I think sometimes that's what gets people caught up is the routine goes away of like, okay, I have to have I was
Yeah.
very
My job
easily,
at 8.
yeah,
Da, da, da,
yeah,
da.
exactly. I was very easily in meetings from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, back to back. I didn't eat lunch. I just drank coffee, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure some can relate, but that goes away. It's like, wow, I have time, like, but what do you do with that time? So for me, it was very important to structure it, to really schedule it, to have that break, to get outside, to walk the dogs, do those things, but to get back at it. And so, but it is a lot of work when you're really looking, at the beginning when you're prospecting who you could work with. And then also, I think I spent time thinking about my story. What is the story I want people to hear? Meaning, like, what happened? Like, why did I leave? What's going on? Like burnout wasn't something that was talked about certainly as much as it is now. I think in 21 to 22, 23, like it was talked about a lot. And I think the pandemic helped people understand that. But I didn't even know that word. I didn't say, oh, I'm burnt out, I'm resigning. I just knew I was a nub.
Right.
So I think it was really important for me not to go back to that space, but to learn from it. And I think that was also important as I was thinking about what's my story to tell people and why am I doing what I'm doing? Because not everybody understands why you would leave a stable corporate environment after, 20 plus years in it
Yeah.
and do something on your own when you're almost 50. I mean, that was the thing too. Oh, you're almost 50. I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, there are doubters, and I think you have to be very careful when you have a dream or a goal, like who you share it with. I think I learned very quickly that not everybody deserves for it to be shared with, meaning that they're probably trying to be protective or being thoughtful will give them a positive presupposition, but some people can be dream killers and you don't need that negativity because you probably already have enough going on between your ears when you're trying to start off of like, am I doing the right thing? Is it going to succeed? Like, am I going to get a client? Like that's
Right.
already going in your head. You don't need anybody out there kind of adding to that negative noise. And so just being careful who you share that with.
That makes total sense. I love that. But yeah, I wanted people to listen, like, because one of the things, like you said, you come from a structured job and then you're like, I'm an entrepreneur. And that means I can sleep till noon and I can do
Oh
like
yeah.
an hour of work. And I
Yeah.
no,
Yeah. I was
you
glad to sleep
cannot.
more than 2 hours,
Yeah.
but I wasn't sleeping till noon. No,
No, you
from
need
that
to
perspective,
work.
yeah, you get to work. But I think what's cool about it is like you're going to work for you. You're doing the work for you. You're being creative. And that was one of the best things for me is like to be able to be creative as much as I wanted within reason, of course. Like every idea isn't a good idea, but like getting them out, like writing them down, thinking about it, because it's an iterative process. Even today in year 4, it's an iterative process of like what's working, what's hitting, what's sticking, what's not.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know any entrepreneur that hits it out of the park with every single thing they do. I mean, you see a lot of that on social media, which you don't see the real stories of probably anyone's life on social media. Very rarely do you do. So I think it's important for people to realize it's a process of succeed and fail probably every day. And you're probably in that type of situation potentially in the corporate world too, but maybe you just don't intentionally notice it enough
Right.
or as much as you do when you're an entrepreneur.
That's good. And surround yourself with people that are, I know for me, like you got to sound like a supportive family. A lot of people listening don't.
Hmm.
So, even family, sometimes you have to separate a bit from because they don't
Right.
understand your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say like think of it as a bullseye, like who's in the center, who's going to help nurture your what you want to accomplish, but also challenge you because it's a balance of nurturing and challenge, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's like, well, I definitely had people, my daughter, my husband, like people say, well, I don't know if that really hits. It's something that would work for you, but I'm not sure if it works for everyone else. Like so it's good to have some challenging. But what I mean by the people that maybe need to be moved to the outer circle of that bullseye, and they may just need to be temporarily moved there,
Mhm.
is like your parents or your best friend or someone you're really close with may be thinking, oh, well, I don't want you to get hurt, or I don't
That's
want
right. They're just
you
trying to protect you normally.
to
Yeah.
protect you, right? And so, but sometimes it's still noise. And you need to like just make sure you put it in a place where it can't kind of get stuck or impact you in a way that holds you back from trying something or from taking a step forward.
That's exactly it. I love that. So switching gears a little bit, I know you're
Yeah.
writing a book, so tell us
Yeah.
about the book. By the way, when this is aired, it will be on pre-order, so we'll make sure to have the links in the show notes, so pre-order it. But tell us about the book and what's your purpose behind it.
Yeah, so the book is called Be Bold Today, Unleash Your Potential, Master Your Mindset, and Achieve Success. And it is all about the BOLD framework, which I actually created during those 4 months when I was trying to put together my services, products, and also heal. And BOLD is an acronym, so believe, own, learn, and design. And it really started with, thinking about my belief system and what was happening with my own beliefs at that time after suffering burnout and where I needed to maybe chuck some of my beliefs that were harming me and really start to embrace the ones that were helping me. And so you go through a process within the bold framework of understanding your beliefs, understanding what you're owning and what you should own and what you should not, because sometimes I have, for example, things that I take in that really aren't mine to own or fix or take care of. And so I needed to think about how I'm using my energy for the things that I should own and not own. And then learning is really having that growth mindset and how to apply that and how to really understand how to move forward with designing a life that's most aligned with your purpose and passion. So that's really what happens when you go through the bold framework. The book really takes you through that process with examples and practices of how to get into each of those areas. And it's something that you can go back and use. Like you may go through it all the way through the first time, and then the next time like you need to maybe go back and brush off what you're learning or brush off your beliefs, because sometimes there's beliefs that can just kind of come into our life that aren't helping us, but we might not be realizing that they're not helping us. So the framework is really to think about all that you have as potential, which is limitless, and how to actually get it into a plan that you can design your life to go forward as as you'd wish and to be the happiest that you can be.
Good, I love that. So in wrapping up, I always ask three final questions and then anything that we didn't touch on that you want to leave our listeners with.
Okay.
And as always, guys, we'll have everything in the show notes below. So please reach out to Leah for, anything. Um, so first and final question is if someone is looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you could say that could help them find it?
Yeah. I think the main thing when you're looking for your purpose is to really think about what it is you're good at that helps others. So maybe you have a great sense of humor and it makes other people smile and laugh. And okay, how can I use that? And what does that look like? Maybe I'm a very good writer and I feel like I can help people tell their story. Maybe I don't want mine to be out there, but maybe I can help other people tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm good at the details of things and I can help someone, manage a project or do something. So really thinking about the things you're good at and how they help others. And I think when we're good at something and we're able to actually bring that to someone else and help them with what, they need to solve or what a problem that they have, I really think that really feeds the passion and our ultimately our purpose in life.
So good.
More
Number
than one
two,
sentence.
that's good though. It's a good sentence. Um, what's one quote, like what's one of your favorite quotes and why?
It's actually one I said, it's the one that comes to mind when you asked me that question today, really is, boldness isn't about finding it, it's about freeing it. So I think
Like
everyone has
that.
boldness within them. It just needs to be freed.
That's a good one. I like that. And number third and final question is, if what's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
I've heard this before, and I hate even thinking about it, honestly.
Hmm.
I guess just off the cuff, she made a difference.
Like that. She made different. All
Yeah.
right. You run into someone in a coffee shop and they're like, "Hey, Leigh, that was awesome. I'm going to try to be more bold. I'm working on that." What's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful to leave our listeners?
Sure. I think the one thing we didn't touch on is like bold doesn't have to be loud. Bold can
Mm,
be very, very quiet. It can be thoughtful. It can be you thinking about a plan. It could be you talking in the sense of like was with a couple people. You could just be like, I realized today I need to do something different. This is not it. This is not aligned. I'm not aligned. And that quiet moment, which isn't splashed on social media or written up in a Forbes article or in a book, is yours and I think some of the most incredible bold moments I had and have had, no one knows about. Like we don't have to have them on social media. So there's a whole continuum of bold. One end is the big splash, the big swing of bold. Everybody sees it, whether it's quitting your job or starting something or doing something big that's kind of out there. And all the way back down to, the quiet moments. So I think just people understanding that they're most likely already making bold moves, they just don't know it. And that's a part of the one of the chapters of the book is really talking about the myths of being bold. And I think sometimes people don't realize they're already doing it.
I like that. That's awesome. Where's the best place that people can find you?
Yeah, so my website, so leighburgess.com, everything about what I do across the businesses and the book is at that website.
Perfect. We'll have that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on. Guys, let's go out there. Let's change the world one starfish or one person at a time. If we can change one life at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks,
Thank you
Leah, for
very
being on.
much.